A portion of this video is brought to you by Anker. For the past 3 months, I've been using the M1 Pro 14-inch MacBook Pro every day as my main computer. With a new design, the return of essential ports, powerful M1 Pro chip, and 120Hz ProMotion display, these computers marked a big change in the MacBook Pro lineup. And today I'm going to share with you my long-term review and experience using the 14-inch M1 Pro MacBook Pro. As always, I will leave all the purchase links below the like button. Let's get started. To start, let me tell you about my spec and why I chose it. I got the M1 Pro 14-inch MacBook Pro in silver with a 1TB SSD. Now, previously I had the 15-inch MacBook Pro with Touch Bar, and going to the 14-inch display on this new MacBook Pro, I can tell you that I don't miss the slightly larger display. In fact, I found the 14-inch model here to be the perfect balance between portability as well as performance. I started with the base 14-inch model, which comes in at $2,000 and has the M1 Pro chip, which has an 8-core CPU and 14-core GPU, as well as 16GB of RAM and a 512GB SSD. In terms of the specs, I only upgraded one, and that is the SSD, going from 512GB up to 1TB for $200. Now, if you plan to use the computer for many years to come, I definitely recommend doing this upgrade. As for myself, after installing all of my apps and files, I found myself using just about 600GB, so that additional headroom really is essential for the years to come. And then in terms of the color, I chose silver. Now, I mentioned this in my initial review video, but I chose silver for two reasons. First, I really like the contrast that it creates with this new black inlay for the keyboard. And then secondly, on my previous MacBook Pro, which was space gray, I found that over time, from the continuous rubbing on the palm rest areas, from the palms, and just from generally using the computer, that the space gray color started to fade gradually over time. And this left these permanent marks, and I think this is less likely to occur on the silver model because the silver color is much closer to the natural color of the aluminum. The M1 Pro MacBook Pros take a new approach towards the design. It really feels solid and well built in the hand. Compared to previous generations, the design is more squared off and boxy, similar to the recent iPhones and iPads. And there's been some mixed opinions on this design, and I can see both sides. It is true that these newer MacBook Pros are not as thin or as sleek as the previous generation. There are no thin tapered edges or super flat keyboard. But, and this is important, this new design is key to this computer's success, and here's why. First, the slightly thicker design allows for more room for better cooling, and this means you can push the computer more without worrying about it throttling and compromising on performance. The larger fans are also whisper quiet, and the computer never gets uncomfortably warm. The design of these new M1 Pro MacBook Pros also creates room for more ports. Apple brought back the HDMI port, and this allows you to quickly hook up to a projector, and then also next to that is an SD card slot. Now, as a creative professional, this really is a dream come true. And all of this while still keeping 3 USB-C ports to still get those super fast transfer speeds, while, for example, editing off an external drive in Final Cut Pro. With the new design also came a new keyboard, and this is a really big upgrade. First, they got rid of the touch bar, something I do not miss, as I prefer to have physical hardware keys that I can press without taking my eyes off the display. And they did keep, however, the Touch ID sensor, and this is great, as you can instantly log into your Mac and make purchases. The keyboard is an absolute pleasure to use and type on, and importantly, unlike the previous butterfly keyboard, it is reliable. The keys have a perfect level of key travel, they're also stable and have nice clicky feedback. And as for the trackpad that sits beneath it, it is accurate, big, and it is the best I've ever used. The battery too is bigger, and combined with the more efficient M1 Pro chip, the battery life on these M1 Pro MacBook Pros is truly fantastic. I'd previously get around 2 to 3 hours of editing in Final Cut Pro on my 15-inch MacBook Pro, whereas now I get 5 to 7 hours, more than double. With normal day-to-day performance, running at max brightness, emails, writing scripts, watching videos, and some video and photo editing, the M1 Pro MacBook Pro easily lasts for a full 9 to 5 workday. Battery life on a laptop is so important, and for me, the M1 Pro MacBook Pro more than delivers in this area. And a crucial part of the battery experience is charging. This is where the Anker 735 Nano 2 65-watt charger comes in. So I've been using this charger for my M1 Pro MacBook Pro and also other devices actually for two main reasons. First is size. As you know, I chose the smaller 14-inch MacBook Pro model for its portable design that is easy to carry and take with me on the go. And with that, I need a charger that is portable too. Thanks to the use of GaN technology, the 735 Nano 2 is just about 50% smaller, or half the size of the charger that came with the MacBook Pro. While still delivering 65 watts of power, it is quite amazing to see how this tiny charger can charge a 14-inch MacBook Pro. And the second reason I use this charger is the ability to charge multiple devices at a time. This is done with the two USB-C ports on the front, as well as the USB-A port. Also featuring Anker's exclusive Power IQ 3.0, which means the charger intelligently adapts and can charge a range of devices from different brands. And this is why the Anker 735 Nano 2 65-watt charger has become my new go-to for charging all of my daily tech. Not just my MacBook Pro, but also iPad Air 5, iPhone 13, Galaxy S22, and accessories like my Apple Watch. It also charges fast. It can charge the 14-inch M1 Pro MacBook Pro from 0% up to 100% in just 2 hours. Whether you work from home or commute to the office, the Anker 735 Nano 2 charger makes keeping your tech charged easier. To step up your charging game and learn more about the Anker 735 Nano 2, be sure to click the link in the description. Thanks to Anker for supporting the channel. Now back to the Mac. It is said almost every year, but when it comes to laptop displays, no one does it better than Apple, and this new Liquid Retina Pro XDR display takes things yet to another level. The razor-thin bezels and rounded corners look super sleek. These thin bezels also allow for a larger display in a smaller computer body. I think for me, the 13-inch MacBook Pro would have been too small, but here you get that 14-inch display in a computer that is basically the same size as the 13-inch MacBook Pro. The display is also 120 Hz, and this makes the computer feel super smooth. Everything you do, from scrolling through text, watching videos, or swiping between pages. Once you get used to having 120 Hz refresh rate, it's hard to go back. The display is also plenty bright, has high contrast and color accuracy. It is truly the best display that I have, and this is why I use it to edit all my photos and videos. And then looking at the top of the display, you'll find the notch. Now, I've said this in my initial review, it does not bother me. It enables the opportunity for more vertical screen space, and this is great when reading emails or longer articles. One thing I would like to see is full screen apps actually go full screen. Like for example, Final Cut Pro can easily stretch to the corners of the display as there's no menus or UI in the top middle of the screen. I would like it if Apple at least gave users the option. Okay, so we've talked about the new design, battery, and display. But what about performance? What's that been like? Well, let me put it this way. If you're thinking of getting one of these and getting the even more powerful M1 Max chip, you may want to think again and save the extra cash and go for the M1 Pro chip instead. As someone who regularly pushes the machine on a daily basis, I can tell you that the M1 Pro chip performance is truly incredible. Editing 4K footage in Final Cut Pro is a breeze. Importing, color grading, rendering, and exporting. I've never really seen the computer struggle or lag. Let me give you an example of my typical daily use. I'll have Final Cut Pro rendering my 4K YouTube video in the background whilst I'm editing a thumbnail in Lightroom, on top of having the regular Mail, Safari windows, documents, and messaging apps open. And all of these processes run without a hitch. If your workflow is similar to mine or less so, then the M1 Pro chip is going to be more than capable. Not to mention, the M1 Pro chip is also more power efficient than the M1 Max chip, so has significant better battery life. When you're choosing between the two chips, choose wisely. And then to add even further to the user experience, the speakers, microphone, and webcam are all great too. The speakers in particular really impressed me, almost as good as the HomePod Mini. They are loud, clear, and the bass has some real depth. Okay, this is the part of the review where I take a step back and look for any areas of improvement. But after using the M1 Pro MacBook Pro every day as my main machine for 3 months, none come to mind. The reliability issues of the previous generation of MacBook Pros, from bad keyboards to speakers that would break, as well as, let's say, less than great design decisions that led to thermal throttling as well as poor airflow, thankfully are a thing of the past. Now, the price of these new machines is steep, but crucially, the M1 Pro MacBook Pro delivers in all key areas. From the high quality design to that incredible display, long battery life, and industry-leading performance. And for this reason, I can highly recommend the new M1 Pro 14-inch MacBook Pro as a longer-term investment. Let me know if you have any questions. As always, I will leave the purchase links down in the description. If you haven't seen them yet, I highly recommend watching my iPad Air 5 review, as well as my iPhone 13 6 months later review. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.